So we got a story here about a brother who was basically another brother locked up for some shit that he didn't do, wasn't even in the area, but for somehow they still managed to arrest him and find him guilty. Okay? So in Lansing, Michigan, after being locked up 1,700 days, nearly 5 years for a crime he did not commit, Herbert Alford, 47, was exonerated in 2020. This after being falsely convicted of Michael Adams' murder in 2016 and receiving a 30 to 60-year sentence. He's now suing Hertz Corporation because they refused to turn over a receipt that corroborated his alibi. A difficult path to freedom because it took several years, multiple court orders, and subpoenas for Hertz to turn over the receipt. Well, we already know about these white companies and that they're all owned by Klan members, but for the simple fact that they arrested this brother and found him guilty of a crime that he did not commit, and Hertz rental car, which black people shouldn't rent shit else from them motherfuckers, were complicit with this man being in prison, with this man being locked up, knowing that they had the information that could have freed him. But we're going to go ahead and play the news story about it, and let's see what they say.
Who says that he was wrongly convicted of murder after Hertz rental car failed to produce a receipt that proved that he was in their rental office just minutes after the crime was committed. Herbert Alford spent nearly 5 years in jail and prison for the 2011 murder of Michael Adams in Lansing, Michigan, but his conviction was overturned in 2018 when a judge finally saw this: a Hertz receipt showing that Alford was in their rental office just minutes after the fatal shooting that was across town. Alford is now suing the car company for failing to produce this vital piece of evidence sooner, despite multiple subpoenas. Hertz, in a statement to ABC News, said, "We are deeply saddened to learn of Mr. Alford's experience. While we were unable to find the historic rental record from 2011 when it was requested in 2015, we continued our good faith efforts to locate it. With advances in data search in the years following, we were able to locate the rental record in 2018 and promptly provided it." And we are joined now by Herbert Alford and his attorney, Mr. James White. Thank you both for being with us. Let's start with you, Mr. White.
Now, mind you, they arrested this brother, locked him up, found him guilty, and he wasn't even in the area. He wasn't even in the vicinity of the crime. Now, for all you black people who don't think that you are under European terrorist occupation, keep listening.
White. Hertz admitted to us that they were first asked for this receipt in 2015 and didn't produce it until 2018. What was Hertz's response during those years, and what do you think was going on?
So there was no response, Lindsay. There were multiple requests for this document, all pursuant to court rules and court orders, some by me, some by the judge. And at no point in time did they ever respond. Not an email, not a carrier pigeon, not a snail mail, not a phone call, nothing. We were left to wonder why it was that was the case. Ultimately, it was produced. Why that was, folks can speculate. I think they saw an African-American man charged with homicide, and you chose that it wasn't worth their time.
And Mr. Alford, you were found guilty of second-degree murder. You were convicted and spent almost 5 years in prison, knowing that you could prove your innocence with one car rental receipt. Explain to us what that was like.
It was like a nightmare. It was like surreal. It was like, I know this can't be happening when I know they got the receipt and they know I was there. And it's like I've been through stuff before, and I knew the consequences. I've been in trouble before, and I dealt with the consequences because it was something that I had done. But to be in this situation when you know you're not guilty of it, it was just surreal.
And give us a sense what those 5 years were like. And did you ever lose hope, or were you anticipating that this day was going to come?
I was always hoping that the day would come, but
I see they got that brother emotional, and I totally understand him, but for all of you black people who do not understand that America is under European terrorist occupation, the only justice in this land is upside those niggas' heads. That's it. Reparations for black America is the exile of all European terrorists and their fucking sympathizers.
At certain days, you wake up in certain moods and you feel like this is my life. And I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen after this, but I never lost hope. I was always hoping that it would come out. But being away from my family, my kids, I got a 11-year-old that I was missing field trips with and going to school, concerts and plays and everything. It was unbelievable.
And you talked a little bit about what you've lost. How are you now rebuilding your life as a free man? And how difficult is that?
I mean, even though it's been proven that it wasn't me, you know, people still be looking at me like he was in prison for this and that. And even though now it came out that I didn't do it, but people had they perspective of me, because after I was found guilty and was convicted, you know, they was like, he this and he that. And then after all this time, they found out that I was telling the truth. But since I've been out, I've been just around my kids, my family, trying to get back into the workforce. And it's just, I don't know, it's just a good feeling to be here now.
I can imagine. And Mr. White, back to you for a moment. I mean, let's just go back to the situation with Hertz. You have suggested that you think that it was because he was a black man. Was there more beyond that? I mean, it would seem that if Hertz had access to the receipt at the time, that they would have brought it forward. Do you feel that this really simply boils down to a matter of race?
No, I'm not suggesting that. But I think, you know, when you isolate out the factors here, you know, again, I think that over time during this case, we're going to see that Hertz did not behave this way as a matter of pattern. They have a legal department, they have counsel, and we know they ultimately responded in 2018. They weren't truthful in that response initially, but responded nonetheless. You know, so the question becomes is why was this case different? You know, as an officer of the court, the idea that an individual corporate citizen would not respond to court orders over the course of a year when one of their customers' lives are at stake is just reprehensible to me. And I think it's an important point. You know, we were not asking them, Lindsay, to mine millions of documents over the course of years that were unrelated to this incident and unrelated to someone they had done business with. This was their customer. He spent money with them. And I think our requests were quite simple. And I think those requests of the court were quite simple. To not respond at all while a man languished in prison is just unthinkable to me. You know, my position is if you're going to be in our community and our citizens are going to spend money with you, you have to respond to the most modest of tasks, like responding to subpoenas, coming to court when a judge orders you to be there, especially when a man's life is at stake.
And Mr. Alford, your message, what you would like this case to ultimately, beyond perhaps some monetary compensation, what your message is?
I just want people to feel like they can trust the people that they deal with, because it make me feel like the only time they care about their customers is when they spending their money with them, because every time I came down there to rent a car, all the paperwork and everything was in order. But now when I need some paperwork to prove my innocence, now all of a sudden everything's not in order and it's hard to come up with.
Well, what an ordeal you have been through. Glad you're on the other side of it at this point, Mr. Alford. We thank you and also Mr. White for your time tonight.
The only thing in this country that matters is theft and murder of black people. That is it. Whether it's stealing your life, stealing your money, theft. That's it. Black lives do not matter in America. The only thing that matters in America is European terrorism against Black America. That is it.